My life, the one I knew, ended the day Sarah did. We had a good life, a quiet life, in a small town in the United States. Mornings started with coffee on the porch. Evenings ended with her head on my shoulder, watching some silly show. It was simple, full of routine, and full of love. Then, one Tuesday, it was just gone. A car accident, on a slick highway, sudden, inexplicable. The police said it was quick, painless. I didn't believe them. Pain doesn't just vanish like that, not when it leaves such a gaping hole behind. The silence that followed her death was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Our house, once filled with her laughter, the clinking of dishes, the soft hum of her singing, became a tomb. Every corner held a memory, every object a ghost. Her perfume, a light floral scent, seemed to linger in the air for weeks, a cruel trick of my mind, or perhaps something more. I'd walk into the living room and catch a whiff, strong and clear, then it would vanish. My chest ached constantly, a dull, heavy throb that never let up. I barely ate, barely slept. The world outside felt muted, unreal. Then things started to get weird. Not right away, not in the first raw weeks of grief, but as the edges of my despair began to soften, just a fraction, the uncanny crept in. It started small. I'd find her favorite mug, the chipped blue one, not in the cupboard where I'd put it, but on her bedside table, perfectly clean. Or a book she was reading, left open to a specific page on the kitchen counter, even though I knew I'd packed all her belongings away. Dismissed them as grief-induced forgetfulness, of course. What else could they be? But then familiar songs would play on the radio, songs that were ours, at the exact moment I was thinking of her most intensely. It felt like she was nudging me, trying to get my attention. The dreams began shortly after, not nightmares, not initially, but intensely vivid dreams where Sarah was there. She wasn't a ghost, not transparent or misty. She was solid, real, her hand warm in mine. Her words were always fragmented, though, like trying to listen to a conversation underwater. "Look for the lines," she'd say, her voice echoing, or, "It's not what you think." Sometimes she just smiled, a sad, knowing smile, and pointed at nothing, or at a vague, shimmering light in the distance. I'd wake up disoriented, heart pounding, a mixture of comfort from her presence and a growing unease about her cryptic messages. What was she trying to tell me? I started taking long walks, trying to escape the heavy air of the house. I'd always loved nature, and now it felt like the only place I could breathe. I found myself drawn to the woods behind our house, to a small clearing I'd never paid much attention to before. There, I started seeing things. Not hallucinations, not exactly, more like patterns. One day, I saw a flock of birds flying in a perfect geometric formation, unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. Another time, the way the light fell through the trees created a shadow pattern on the ground that looked like an ancient symbol. I dismissed it as my mind making connections where there were none, but the feeling persisted, a quiet insistence that nature itself was trying to communicate. The numbers started appearing everywhere, 11:11 on the clock when I happened to glance up. 3:33 on a license plate I was stuck behind at a traffic light. These weren't new. People always notice these things, but they became relentless. On receipts, on digital displays in stores, even in the page numbers of books I randomly opened. It stopped being coincidence. It started feeling like a countdown or a breadcrumb trail, an undeniable, almost insistent pattern that pulled me along. A seed of doubt about my sanity took root, but alongside it, a powerful sense of purpose. I felt like I was being guided, gently but firmly, towards an unknown, inevitable destiny. It was a strange mix, the fear that I was losing my grip on reality, and the profound certainty that I was on the brink of something monumental. And then there was the feeling of being watched. Not in a creepy stalker way, but more like a quiet, ancient observation. Like someone was waiting for me to catch on. One rainy afternoon, while sorting through some old boxes in the attic, a task I'd put off for months, my hand brushed against something heavy, wrapped in an old velvet cloth. It wasn't Sarah's, I knew that. It felt too old, too solid. Unwrapping it, I found a book. Not a paperback, not a modern hardcover. This was different. Its cover was dark, worn leather, its pages thick and yellowed, filled with strange script, symbols I'd never seen before. It looked like it belonged in a museum. I had no idea where it came from, or how it ended up in our attic. But its sudden appearance, right when I was feeling most lost and most guided, felt like a direct response to everything I'd been experiencing. It hummed slightly in my hands, a faint vibration as if alive. This wasn't just an old book. This was a key. The book, this ancient artifact, was unlike anything I had ever touched. It wasn't just old. It felt ancient, almost alive. Its cover was a dark, almost black leather, so worn and smooth in places that it felt like polished stone. Yet in others, it was rough, scarred, telling a story of countless hands and untold centuries. There were no visible seams, no obvious binding, just a continuous, organic feel to it. The pages, thick and fibrous, had a texture I couldn't place. Not parchment, not paper, but something in between, resilient and strangely warm. The script etched onto these pages was a mystery. It wasn't Latin, not Greek, not any language I recognized from historical texts or linguistic studies. It was a swirling, elegant calligraphy, interspersed with symbols that seemed to glow faintly at the edges of my vision. I spent hours, then days, trying to make sense of it. I tried comparing the symbols to ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, to Mayan glyphs, to runic alphabets, but nothing matched. Each symbol seemed to carry multiple meanings, shifting and changing, depending on the context of the surrounding script. It was a language designed to hide its secrets, to reveal itself only to those who were ready. The faint hum it emitted, which I initially dismissed as my imagination, became more pronounced when I focused on it. A low, resonant vibration that seemed to emanate from deep within its core. It wasn't just a book. It was a device, a repository of knowledge waiting to be unlocked. The symbols from the book didn't stay confined to its pages. They began to bleed into my everyday life, appearing in the most unexpected places. I'd see a familiar swirl in a coffee stain on my kitchen counter, a series of dots and lines in the condensation on a window pane, even in the intricate patterns of tree bark during my walks. It was as if the book had opened my eyes to a hidden layer of reality, a secret language woven into the fabric of the world around me. Each appearance was a confirmation, a nod from the universe that I was indeed on the right track, even if I didn't fully understand where that track was leading. My dreams, which had been a source of fragmented comfort and confusion, now became more explicit, more urgent. Sarah appeared, clearer than before, her face no longer shrouded in a shimmering haze. She didn't speak in riddles anymore. "The library," she'd say, her voice calm but firm. "Look for the oldest texts, the ones they tried to forget." And another time, "The mountain where the lines meet. The truth is there." She would point to specific parts of the book in my dream. her finger tracing symbols that would then glow with an internal light. I'd wake up. With a jolt, the image of the book and the specific symbols burned into my mind, a clear directive. The emotional intensity of these encounters was overwhelming. It was no longer just about grief, it was about a mission, a shared purpose that transcended life and death. Following her dream guidance, I started researching ancient texts. I visited university libraries, obscure archives, and even contacted specialists in ancient languages. It felt like playing detective, sifting through mountains of information, looking for a needle in a haystack. Then a breakthrough. A sudden, almost intuitive connection. The symbols from the book, those strange, elegant markings, started to align with certain pictographs found in early interpretations of the Ten Commandments. Not the versions we have today, but much older, more primal versions, found on fragments of clay tablets and papyrus scrolls, often dismissed as incomplete or corrupted by modern scholars. As I pieced together these fragments, comparing them to the book's script, a glaring discrepancy emerged. It wasn't just a different translation. It was a missing piece, an anomaly in understanding. One particular verse, or what seemed to be a commandment, stood out. It didn't fit with the moral or ethical framework of the others. It felt profoundly out of place, almost anachronistic, like a piece of advanced technology found in an ancient ruin. It spoke of concepts that seemed too complex, too far-reaching for the time it was supposedly written. The standard interpretations of the Ten Commandments, the ones I had learned as a child, suddenly felt incomplete, watered down, almost deliberately altered. It was a gut feeling, a deep-seated intuition that something fundamental had been hidden, or perhaps removed, from human understanding. This realization ignited a fire within me. The growing sense of a hidden truth became undeniable. It wasn't just a linguistic puzzle. It was a historical cover-up, a deliberate omission that had shaped human civilization for millennia. I felt a chill run down my spine, a wave of cold dread mixed with exhilarating discovery. The idea that such a foundational set of laws could be incomplete, that humanity had been living under a partial truth, was staggering. It felt like an unseen hand had been guiding human history, editing the narrative to suit its own purposes. And then, the first glimpse of the other. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible, a shimmer in my peripheral vision, like heat rising from asphalt on a summer day but indoors, in my quiet study. A shift in the light, too subtle to be a trick of the eye. A sound that wasn't quite human, a faint, high-pitched frequency that seemed to vibrate just at the edge of my hearing, gone before I could properly focus on it. It wasn't terrifying, not yet, but it was profoundly unsettling. It was a hint, a whisper, that I wasn't alone in this journey, that an unseen presence was observing my progress, waiting for me to fully grasp the magnitude of what I was uncovering. The hair on my arms stood up, a primal instinct screaming that something ancient and powerful was very, very close. I knew, with a certainty that bypassed logic, that I was being watched. Not menacingly, but with an intense, patient observation, as if they were waiting for me to fully understand before making themselves known. The game, I realized, was just beginning. The subtle anomalies I'd noticed before started to intensify. The synchronistic events became undeniable, almost aggressive. It was like the universe itself was trying to get my attention, shouting at me instead of whispering. I'd see a specific number sequence on a digital clock, then look up to find the same sequence on a license plate driving by, right as a news report on the radio mentioned a celestial alignment happening that very night. Unusual weather patterns would sweep in, sudden storms or clear skies, always coinciding with a new breakthrough in my research. Power fluctuations in my house became common, lights flickering, electronics buzzing oddly, especially when I was deep into deciphering the ancient texts. It felt like the very fabric of reality was stretching, bending around my focused efforts, all leading to some grand cosmic event. My dreams, which had been a source of comfort and cryptic guidance, now grew more urgent. My wife's presence in them was palpable, her emotional state conveying a profound sense of urgency, a plea for understanding. She wasn't just a comforting image anymore. She was a messenger with a critical mission. Her words, once fragmented, became clearer, more direct. She spoke of time, not as a linear progression, but as something pliable, something with lines that could diverge. She spoke of choices, not just individual ones, but collective decisions that had far-reaching consequences. Her eyes, in the dream, held a deep sadness, a knowing sorrow that seemed to reflect the weight of what she was trying to tell me. I'd wake up with my heart pounding, the echoes of her voice still ringing in my ears, a cold sweat covering my skin. The urgency she projected in those dreams transferred directly to me, pushing me harder, faster in my research. Then it happened. Through a breakthrough in translation, a connection made between seemingly unrelated symbols and ancient dialects, I uncovered it. What appeared to be an 11th, suppressed commandment. It wasn't hidden in plain sight. It was deliberately obscured, woven into the fabric of the other texts in a way that required a specific kind of key to unlock. The moment I understood its meaning, a profound and disturbing truth washed over me. A physical sensation of chills ran down my spine, so intense it felt like ice water in my veins. A high-pitched ringing filled my ears, momentarily deafening me to everything else. And then, a sudden, blinding clarity. It was like a veil had been lifted, revealing a landscape I had always lived in, but never truly seen. The commandment wasn't a moral rule for human behavior. It was something else entirely, something that redefined humanity's place in the universe. The emotional impact of this discovery was immense. Shock, disbelief, and then a profound sense of betrayal. The realization that humanity had been living under a partial truth, or perhaps a deliberate deception for millennia, hit me hard. It wasn't just a simple mistake in translation. It felt like an intentional omission, a deliberate act to keep us in the dark. The foundational beliefs I had held, the moral framework I had grown up with, suddenly felt like a carefully constructed illusion. It was a dizzying, disorienting feeling, like the ground beneath my feet had vanished. Who would do this? And why? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more unsettling than the last. A desperate drive took hold of me to find external validation for this shocking discovery. I needed to know I wasn't going crazy, that this wasn't some elaborate delusion brought on by grief. I sought out obscure scholarly works, ancient artifacts mentioned in forgotten texts, anything that could confirm what I had found. I felt guided by an unseen force, almost pulled toward specific archives, dusty libraries, and online forums dedicated to esoteric knowledge. It was as if every piece of information I needed appeared exactly when I needed it. A breadcrumb trail leading me deeper into the rabbit hole. The signs in nature intensified alongside my research. Animals behaved strangely around me. Birds would gather in unusual formations outside my window, their chirping taking on a rhythmic, almost coded quality. Specific plants in my garden seemed to respond to my emotional state, blooming vibrantly when I felt a surge of understanding, or withering slightly when I was frustrated and lost. It was as if the natural world itself was mirroring the growing cosmic tension, responding to the profound shift in my own understanding. The air around me often felt heavy, charged with an invisible energy. The subtle anomalies in my peripheral vision became more frequent, more defined. What was once a fleeting shimmer was now a distinct distortion in the air, a momentary ripple that suggested something was there, just beyond the edge of my sight. I sensed a presence, not yet seen but undeniably there, observing my every move. It wasn't the menacing feeling of being stalked, but rather the intense, quiet scrutiny of an ancient observer. It felt patient, waiting for me to catch up, to fully grasp the weight of the truths I was uncovering. The hair on my arms and neck would stand up, a constant prickling sensation that told me I was not alone. A powerful, almost visceral premonition settled over me. I was on the verge of a direct, life-altering encounter. The feeling was so strong, it was almost physical. A pressure in my chest, a hum behind my eyes. The air around me felt charged, like before a thunderstorm, static electricity playing on my skin. Every nerve ending felt alive, hyper-aware. I knew with absolute certainty that the next step in this journey would not be a mere discovery in a book, but a face-to-face meeting with whatever entity had been guiding me, waiting for me, all along. The game was no longer just beginning. It was about to enter its next, most critical phase. I braced myself, my heart pounding, for what was coming. The premonition turned into an undeniable pull, a magnetic force guiding me towards a specific, remote location in the United States. It wasn't a place I had ever considered visiting, yet every fiber of my being screamed that this was where I needed to be. The journey itself felt fated. Each turn of the road, each gas station stop, marked by further synchronicities. The numbers 1111 and 333 appeared on every clock, every receipt, every digital display. License plates seemed to spell out messages or contain numerical sequences that resonated with my research. It was as if the universe itself was confirming my path, urging me onward with a growing sense of anticipation that both thrilled and terrified me. I drove for days, crossing states, the landscape blurring outside my window, my mind singularly focused on the destination I somehow knew was waiting. Upon arrival, the environment was subtly altered, not in any dramatic way, but in a manner that registered deep within my senses. The air, for instance, didn't just feel like air. It thrummed with an unseen energy, a low vibration that I could almost hear. Colors appeared more vibrant, the greens of the trees a deeper emerald, the blues of the sky an impossible shade. Sounds, usually muffled by distance, became distinct, almost distorted, as if every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call, was amplified and sharpened. There was a feeling of extreme pressure in my head, a dull ache that wasn't painful, but rather like my brain was struggling to process an overwhelming amount of new input. It was like stepping into a different dimension, a place where the rules of reality were bent just enough to be unsettling. Then came the first manifestation of the entity, not as a physical appearance, but as an undeniable presence. It began with a shift in the light, a subtle change in the way the sun's rays hit the ground, making shadows dance in impossible patterns. Then, a distortion in the air, a shimmering effect, like heat rising off asphalt, but without any discernible source of heat. It was like looking through wavy glass, but the glass was the air itself. A profound sense of ancient intelligence settled over me, a feeling of being observed not by a single pair of eyes, but by something vast and all-encompassing. It was overwhelming, a silent roar in my mind that screamed, You are not alone. The feeling was so intense, so profound that it brought me to my knees. The entity didn't speak with words, not in any human language I understood. Instead, it communicated through patterns of light that flickered and danced before me, forming intricate geometric shapes that conveyed complex ideas without sound. Sometimes, it was through resonant frequencies, a low hum that vibrated through my bones, carrying a message that bypassed my ears and went straight to my understanding. Other times, it was a form of telepathic resonance, a direct transfer of thought and emotion, pure information that flowed into my mind, bypassing the need for language entirely. It was alien, yet strangely familiar, as if I was remembering a way of communicating I had long forgotten. Through this nonverbal exchange, the entity confirmed the existence of the suppressed commandment. It showed me why it was removed, or rather, why it was never meant for human understanding in our current state. The revelation wasn't just about a missing law, it was about a fundamental misunderstanding of our place in the cosmic order. The profound implications of this revelation washed over me. It was like being handed the instruction manual for the universe, only to realize humanity had been operating with a faulty, incomplete version all along. The entity conveyed that the true nature of this commandment was not a rule for human behavior, but a principle governing something far grander, something that humanity, in its current evolutionary stage, was simply not ready to comprehend or uphold. The entity then revealed the connection between my wife's passing, her messages, and my role in this unfolding revelation. Her sacrifice, it explained, was not a random tragedy, but part of a larger, cosmic design. She had been a conduit, a spiritual anchor, chosen to guide me through my grief and towards this ultimate truth. Her messages in my dreams, the synchronicities, the artifacts, all were orchestrated by her, from a plane of existence beyond my current comprehension, to prepare me for this moment. She wasn't just gone, she was working. This understanding brought a strange mix of sorrow and profound comfort, a sense of purpose to her loss. In fleeting, subtle ways, the entity hinted at the existence of parallel timelines and realities. It suggested that humanity's choices, our collective actions and beliefs, were not isolated events, but had far-reaching consequences that rippled across these dimensions. Every decision we made, every path we chose, created a new line, a new potential future. It was a dizzying concept, implying that our current reality was just one thread in an infinite tapestry of possibilities, all influenced by our actions. As these revelations unfolded, a growing sense of a cosmic game started to take shape in my mind. I began to comprehend the vastness of the forces at play, a drama unfolding on a scale I could barely fathom. Humanity, it seemed, was not just a player, but a crucial piece in this immense, intricate game, where our fate, and perhaps the fate of other realities, truly hung in the balance. The stakes were impossibly high, and I, a grieving husband, had somehow been drawn into the center of it all. The pressure in my head intensified, my mind struggling to contain such monumental truths. The light around me intensified, not blinding, but rich and warm, like standing inside a sunrise. The shimmering distortion in the air solidified, coalescing into a form that defied simple description. It wasn't a creature in the way we understand creatures. There were no eyes, no mouth, no limbs as we know them. It was a being of pure, structured light and energy, constantly shifting, flowing, yet maintaining a profound geometric coherence. Its presence was ethereal, like a living nebula, yet it felt utterly tangible, radiating an aura of wisdom that settled deep within my core. It wasn't terrifying, not at all. It was majestic, ancient, and utterly tranquil, a silent symphony of existence. My mind struggled to process its appearance, reaching for comparisons that simply didn't exist in my human experience. It was like witnessing a fundamental principle of the universe made manifest. This being, this alien, communicated not with words, but with a direct flow of understanding into my consciousness. It revealed its ancient connection to Earth, a bond far predating human recorded history. It wasn't a conqueror or a colonizer, but a guardian, an observer, part of a collective intelligence that had watched over this planet for eons. Its presence now, it explained, was linked to humanity's critical juncture, a point in our development where our choices could irrevocably alter our path. It was here because we needed to understand. Then came the true translation. The alien began to unravel the original 10 Commandments, not as they were passed down through human history, but as they were truly intended. It was like peeling back layers of mistranslation, cultural interpretation, and deliberate alteration. Each commandment, when presented in its original, pure form, carried nuanced meanings that had been entirely lost. Thou shalt not kill, for instance, was not just about physical murder, but about the destruction of potential, the suppression of spirit, and the systemic harm to life in all its forms. Honor thy father and thy mother, expanded beyond biological parents to encompass the reverence for one's origins, one's ancestral wisdom, and the very source of life itself. It was a revelation that reshaped my understanding of morality and ethics, showing how far humanity had strayed from the original intent. But the most profound revelation, the one that truly shook me, was the 11th commandment, the one deemed too dangerous, too powerful, too misunderstood for humanity in its earlier stages. The alien elaborated on it, explaining its true purpose. It wasn't a commandment for humans at all. It was a directive, a fundamental law for the guardians themselves, for beings like the alien. It was about the delicate balance of cosmic non-interference, the profound responsibility of observing without overtly directing, of allowing evolution to take its natural, often painful course. This 11th commandment, in its essence, was a law governing the interaction between advanced civilizations and developing ones. It dictated the strict limits of intervention, the sacredness of free will, and the catastrophic consequences of disrupting a species' natural trajectory. Humanity, in its infancy, could not have comprehended such a complex principle, let alone upheld it. Its accidental discovery, or deliberate misinterpretation, by early human mystics would have been disastrous. They would have tried to apply a cosmic law to human behavior, creating paradoxes and leading to immense suffering. It was removed, or rather, never fully revealed, to protect us from ourselves, from a truth we were not ready to wield. The weight of this knowledge was immense. It explained so much about the suffering and confusion in human history, the feeling of being alone in the universe. We weren't alone, but the rules of engagement were far more complex than we could have imagined. The alien then expanded on the concept of lines and choices, a theme my wife had hinted at in my dreams. It explained that humanity's free will, our collective decisions, were constantly creating divergent timelines. Each major choice, each global shift in consciousness, branched off into a new line of reality. The current trajectory, the alien conveyed with a subtle shift in its light, was concerning. Too many lines were leading towards discord, imbalance, and self-destruction. It was at this point that the alien revealed the true extent of my wife's spiritual awareness. She wasn't just a conduit. She was a highly evolved spiritual being who had chosen to incarnate and play a pivotal role in guiding me towards this revelation. Her messages were not just comfort, but critical intelligence, carefully crafted to awaken me without overwhelming me. Her sacrifice, her passing, was a planned event, a necessary catalyst to propel me onto this path. She had known what was coming, and she had accepted her role with grace and courage. A wave of profound love and gratitude washed over me, mixed with the bittersweet understanding of her immense sacrifice. Humanity's prophesied destiny was then laid bare. The alien outlined a future with two starkly different paths. One led to profound spiritual evolution, a harmonious integration with the cosmic consciousness, and a flourishing of peace and innovation. The other led to catastrophic self-destruction, a descent into chaos and oblivion, not just for Earth, but with ripples affecting other realities. The choice, the alien emphasized, was entirely ours. The prophecy wasn't a fixed decree, but a potential outcome dependent on the path chosen by humanity. I grappled with the immense weight of this newly acquired knowledge. My mind felt stretched, expanded beyond its previous limits. I felt both empowered by the clarity and burdened by the responsibility. It was a truth that could change everything, yet it was a truth almost impossible to convey. The world I knew, the history I had learned, the very foundations of my understanding, had been utterly transformed. I was no longer just a man grieving his wife. I was a recipient of cosmic truth, tasked with an impossible mission. The air around me still hummed with the alien's presence, its silent wisdom a constant pressure against my consciousness. The alien's luminous form pulsed with an intensified urgency, its silent message pressing into my mind with undeniable force. Humanity, it conveyed, stood at a critical crossroads. Every choice we made now, every collective thought, every act of kindness or cruelty would ripple out, determining a future not just for Earth, but for countless other realities. The stakes were impossibly high, a cosmic game where our free will was both our greatest gift and our most perilous burden. It then presented a stark warning about the dangers of continued ignorance, particularly regarding the manipulation of ancient truths. The 11th commandment, the one never intended for human application, held a key. It was a powerful tool, a fundamental law of cosmic balance. But in the wrong hands or misunderstood, it could be misused with devastating consequences. The alien didn't elaborate on what those consequences might be, but the mental image it projected was one of profound imbalance, a tearing of the very fabric of existence. It was clear that this truth, while vital, needed to be handled with immense wisdom and respect. Suddenly, without words, the alien offered glimpses of divergent futures. These weren't just mental images. They were full sensory experiences, brief but vivid flashes of what could be. I saw one timeline where cities gleamed with sustainable technology, where people moved with a quiet dignity, connected not just to each other but to the planet itself. There was no hunger, no war, only a shared pursuit of knowledge and spiritual growth. The air felt clean, the laughter genuine. Then the vision shifted. I saw another timeline, a grim, desolate landscape. Buildings lay in ruins, their skeletons reaching for a perpetually smoggy sky. People moved like shadows, their faces etched with despair, their eyes vacant. Resources were scarce, and conflict was a constant, brutal reality. It was a world consumed by its own darkness, a direct result of unchecked greed and a complete disconnect from any higher purpose. The contrast was horrifying, a visceral demonstration of the weight of our collective choices. One path led to harmony and enlightenment, the other to chaos and self-destruction. The alien emphasized that these were not fixed destinies, but potential outcomes, entirely dependent on humanity's collective will. The alien then touched upon the delicate concept of intervention and non-intervention. It explained that the cosmic laws were strict. Direct interference in a developing civilization's free will was forbidden. However, there were critical junctures, moments of such profound significance, where a subtle nudge, a revelation of hidden truths, became permissible, even necessary. This current revelation was one such instance. Humanity had reached a point where the consequences of its choices were so far-reaching that a direct, albeit non-coercive communication was deemed vital. It was a last-ditch effort, a plea from an ancient guardian who had observed our journey for millennia. It highlighted the crucial role of awakened individuals, people like me, who had been chosen or had, through their own spiritual journey, become receptive to these higher truths. We were the crucial links, the ones tasked with disseminating this truth, with inspiring change. The alien made it clear, and this wasn't about converting everyone overnight, but about planting seeds, igniting sparks in those who were ready to receive them. It was a call to lead by example, to share the knowledge not through force but through genuine understanding and compassion. The alien's message was not a command, but a profound imploration. It urged humanity to remember its true potential, to tap into the wellspring of wisdom and love that resided within each of us, and to align with higher spiritual principles. It wasn't about blind faith, but about a deep, intuitive understanding of our place in the cosmic tapestry. The path to evolution was open, but it required conscious effort, a collective shift in perspective. Throughout this entire mind-bending exchange, I felt my wife's spiritual presence. It was a constant, comforting anchor in the swirling vortex of information. Her essence was woven into the alien's message, reinforcing every point, every nuance. It was as if she was there, standing beside me, lending her silent support, reminding me that I was not alone in this monumental task. Her presence was a testament to the alien's words, a living proof of the interconnectedness of all things. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the alien began to recede. Its blinding light softened, its geometric form becoming less defined, more ethereal. It didn't vanish in a flash, but rather dissolved, fading back into the shimmering air from which it had coalesced. Yet, even as it disappeared from my sight, I felt its indelible mental and spiritual imprint. The knowledge, the urgency, the profound sense of destiny. It was all still there, etched into my very being. The silence that followed its departure was deafening, yet the humming energy it had left behind still vibrated through the air, a potent reminder of the cosmic encounter I had just experienced. My world, my understanding of reality, had been irrevocably altered. The alien's departure left me in a profound solitude, a silence that felt heavier and more significant than any I had ever known. The air still hummed with a subtle energy, a ghost of the powerful presence that had just been there. The world around me, the familiar trees and distant mountains, now looked different, imbued with a new, almost daunting meaning. Every leaf, every shadow, seemed to hold a secret, a connection to the vast cosmic tapestry the alien had revealed. My own reality, once so solid and predictable, now felt like a thin veil over something infinitely larger and more complex. I was alone, yet profoundly connected to everything. The emotional impact of what I had witnessed and learned was overwhelming. A mix of fear, a deep, reverent awe, and an unsettling sense of responsibility washed over me. There was also a strange, quiet joy, a profound sense of purpose that settled deep in my chest. Reconciling this cosmic truth with the mundane reality I had known was proving to be incredibly difficult. How could I ever go back to worrying about traffic or bills after being shown the true nature of existence? The critical juncture humanity faced? My mind raced, trying to process the sheer scale of the information, the weight of the secret I now carried. It was a burden, yes, but also a privilege, a calling I couldn't ignore. My connection to my wife, though, felt stronger and clearer than ever before. Her messages, once fragmented whispers through dreams, now resonated with a deeper, undeniable truth. She wasn't just a memory. She was a guiding light, an active participant in this unfolding cosmic drama. Her sacrifice, the pain of her loss, now made a terrifying, beautiful kind of sense. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was a profound understanding of her role, a validation of her enduring presence. I could almost feel her hand in mine, guiding me, comforting me, urging me forward. She was no longer a source of sorrow, but a beacon of strength and clarity. The immediate challenge, the one that kept circling in my mind, was how to share this incredible, potentially world-altering information. How could I possibly convey what I had experienced without being dismissed as delusional, a madman who had lost his mind after his wife's death? The risk involved in speaking out felt immense. I could lose everything: my reputation, my remaining connections, perhaps even my freedom. Yet, the urgency of the alien's message, the visions of those divergent timelines, spurred me on. The truth, I knew, had to be told, regardless of the personal cost. Even after the alien's departure, the synchronicities continued, almost as if the universe itself was reinforcing the reality of my encounter. A specific number sequence would appear on a digital clock, just as I was grappling with a particularly difficult thought. A bird would land on my windowsill and stare at me with an unusual intensity whenever I felt doubt creeping in. These weren't random occurrences. They were subtle reminders, gentle nudges from the unseen forces that had orchestrated this entire journey. They were confirmations that my experience was real, that my mission was ongoing, and that I was not alone in this endeavor. An intuitive pull began to grow within me, a sense that I needed to connect with others. Not just anyone, but those who might also be experiencing similar awakenings, receiving similar messages, or feeling the same profound shift in reality. How would I find them? I didn't know yet, but I started to pay closer attention to subtle signs in others. A flicker of recognition in someone's eyes when I spoke of strange concepts, an unexpected depth in a casual conversation, a shared sense of unease or wonder about the state of the world. I knew I couldn't do this alone. The task was too immense. I needed allies, fellow travelers on this path. The alien's warning about the lines and choices continued to fuel a powerful, almost desperate urgency to act. Time, I understood, was not limitless. Humanity was at a precipice, and the direction we chose now would have consequences far beyond our immediate comprehension. I felt a tightening in my chest, a constant pressure to move, to speak, to share. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on me, transforming my grief into an unshakable resolve. Inaction was no longer an option. And so, standing there in the quiet aftermath, I made a solemn vow. I would honor my wife's sacrifice, her crucial role in guiding me to this point. I would honor the alien's message, its plea for humanity's awakening. I committed myself, fully and completely, to the arduous task of sharing this truth, of trying to awaken others to the profound choices that lay before us. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges, but the clarity of my purpose burned bright within me. I was ready. The journey, I realized, was just beginning. The first steps of disclosure felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I knew I couldn't just drop this bombshell on the world all at once. That would be a recipe for disaster, for ridicule, and for being completely ignored. My plan began with subtle hints, woven into conversations, online posts, and even some anonymous submissions to fringe publications. I started writing, not as a scientist or a prophet, but as a storyteller, sharing fragments of my experience, couching the more unbelievable parts in allegory or metaphor. It was a test, a way to gauge the receptiveness of the world, to see where the cracks in the collective skepticism might lie. Each small step, each shared thought, felt like dropping a pebble into a vast, still lake, hoping for a ripple. My personal life, predictably, underwent a profound transformation. The man who had been lost in grief, wandering through a fog of sorrow, was gone. In his place was someone driven by a clear, unwavering purpose. My fear, once a constant companion, had been replaced by a quiet resolve. My understanding of existence had fundamentally shifted. The mundane worries that once consumed me now seemed trivial, almost comical, against the backdrop of cosmic truths. I found myself looking at people differently, seeing the potential, the light, but also the deep-seated fears and conditioning that held them back. My home, once a tomb of memories, became a sanctuary of study and contemplation. I meditated more, read ancient texts with new eyes, and spent hours just observing the natural world, seeing the patterns the alien had spoken of everywhere. Despite the somber warnings from the alien, the core message that resonated most deeply within me was one of enduring hope. Humanity, for all its flaws and destructive tendencies, possessed an incredible, untapped potential for greatness, for spiritual evolution. The alien hadn't spoken of a predetermined doom, but of choices, of paths. That meant we still had agency, still had the power to steer our collective future towards light rather than shadow. This hope became my fuel, the engine driving my every action, reminding me that even in the face of overwhelming odds, change was possible. My wife's presence, though not physical, remained a constant source of inspiration and subtle guidance. Her messages had evolved. No longer fragmented dreams, they now manifested as intuitive insights, sudden flashes of understanding, or a profound sense of peace when I was on the right track. It was as if she had become a part of my consciousness, a gentle whisper of encouragement, a knowing smile from beyond the veil. Her love, once a source of pain, was now a wellspring of strength, reminding me of the profound connection that transcended even death itself. With this newfound clarity and purpose, I felt compelled to issue a direct, impassioned plea to anyone who would listen. To the audience, to you, I urged, look beyond the surface. Question established narratives. Don't simply accept what you are told, but seek your own truth. The world is far more complex, far more magical, and far more interconnected than most realize. The answers aren't always found in textbooks or news reports. Sometimes they are found in the quiet corners of your own heart, in the whispers of nature, or in the synchronicities that dance around you every day. Open your mind, Open your heart and allow yourself to see. I stressed the immense importance of individual choice. The future, I explained, is not a fixed, unchangeable script. It is a tapestry woven by the collective choices of billions of individuals. Every thought, every action, every decision, no matter how small, contributes to the overall fabric of reality. We are not passive observers. We are active co-creators. If we choose fear, division, and ignorance, that is the future we will manifest. But if we choose love, unity, and wisdom, an entirely different, brighter future awaits. The power, I emphasized, lies within each of us. This wasn't just my journey anymore. It was ours. I extended an invitation, a heartfelt call to join me on this journey of discovery and awakening, to explore the possibilities of humanity's true destiny, to question, to seek, to grow. We are all connected, all part of this grand cosmic dance. By awakening ourselves, we help awaken others. By seeking truth, we contribute to a collective shift in consciousness. The path ahead is long, and it will require courage, but it is a path worth walking, together. As I spoke these words, a faint echo seemed to reverberate through the air, a sound almost imperceptible, like the distant hum of a cosmic engine. Then, on the screen of my computer, a new number sequence flickered into existence, momentarily replacing the time. 4. It was a familiar pattern, one I had seen before, always preceding a new insight, a new clue. The message was clear. This was not the end. The story, the journey, the revelations were far from over. The universe, it seemed, had more to show us.